Hi there, Catherine here, back from a week-long vacation. Once a year, my husband and I sneak out and unplug. We visit a cabin in the Black Forest, which sporadically has an internet signal in the outhouse. No joke. There is one light bulb and 3 outlets which can handle small electronics. Basically, we have the radio going for music, and a few times during the day we check our phones. If there is signal at that moment. This is a great way to refresh after a year of constant chaos. Then this time we came home. And with Trump, this week away feels more like a year. Trump and his administration currently have the habit of moving like a whirlwind. Every day there are new executive orders and now memos from his cabinet. It has slowed a bit from his first days in office, but is keeping up a steady pace of change. It feels like there is no chance to take a breath. When one does, it takes a week to catch up on all that passed in a moment, while still trying to keep abreast what is currently happening. At times, this also feels intentional. If more and more new orders are signed, then the opposition is hit with a deluge and completely overwhelmed.
I strongly believe in the flood the zone theory, which is just overwhelm the opposition.
What should be dealt with first? What is a priority? If opposition is jumping from topic to topic, then nothing is effectively dealt with. This is a good segue to this week's topic, the DOGE wrecking ball. Almost daily, Musk's DOGE team is in the news, attacking another government agency. His core team is composed of young men ages 19 to 25. This has been covered often in the media, especially noting how one member of the team, Edward Korstein's screen name is immature. But most youths have been immature at some point. It is silly and should not be a major point against him. More alarming is the same person was fired from an internship at Path Network for leaking sensitive information to a competitor. Path Network provides network intelligence services. That sounds like pretty sensitive information which passes through the hands of the employees. This young man was fired only about 2 years ago in 2022. Yes, people can change in a short time, but it usually takes a drastic change in life, not a firing and then a move to a bigger company with a more powerful position. Korstein was essentially not punished for his actions, but rewarded. Another team member, Marco Elez, initially quit his position with the DOGE team after there was media backlash about all the racist posts he had been posting on social media in 2024.
25-year-old Marco Elez posting in December, quote, "I just want a eugenic immigration policy." In September, there was this, quote, "normalize Indian hate."
Again, yes, these are young men who are bound to make some stupid mistakes in their youth and certainly can grow over time. We all have gone through some stupid phase at a point in our life. Yet that is the key phrase, over time. It is highly doubtful Elez has had a major change of heart and a whole new outlook on life in only a few months. He also has the vice president, who is married to an Indian woman, defend him, and Musk has made it clear he was wanted on the team by going after him to reinstate him. So where's his punishment? He's now endorsed by people that have some connections with the Indian community. Now, Korstein, Ellis, and their other young teammates, they're going through government agencies and downloading sensitive material about millions of Americans. Some of these include Office of Personnel Management, Medicare and Medicaid, Department of the Treasury, Department of Veterans Affairs, the Education Department. For those who have never worked in a secure environment or in any government facility at all, let me explain a bit to put this into perspective. For a number of years, I worked in smaller facilities on military bases. I worked in recreation facilities like craft stores and libraries, fun stuff, where the only clearance I needed was confidential. This meant I had access to personnel records, which included sensitive information such as birth dates, addresses, social security numbers. Could have done major damage to a number of people if I had abused my access. Even with that limited access, I still could not plug in a hard drive or a flash drive into my computer. The moment I did, a signal would have been sent to IT and I could be locked out of the network and my computer. Again, craft stores, libraries. Ooh, what national secrets am I going to steal? People I knew in the intelligence community were under far stricter restrictions. They worked in buildings with no windows, All devices had to be locked in a locker in the entrance of their buildings. This included cell phones, MP3 players, flash drives, etc. All devices. These people worked on closed, secured networks. The process for acquiring a security clearance is thorough and lengthy. I have personally seen soldiers denied a clearance after months of job training for something as seemingly small as they smoked marijuana in the distant past when they were younger. All their job training was wasted, and they were placed in dead-end jobs to finish out their military service. This is pretty strict. Now there is the DOGE team, sweeping in with no clearance, accessing highly sensitive data. When security personnel from U.S. Aid attempted to stop DOGE members from accessing secure areas, the officials were moved aside and placed on administrative leave.
U.S. Aid security chiefs were placed on leave after refusing to turn over classified material in restricted areas.
These individuals were doing their job, attempting to keep sensitive information secured, and they were punished. OPM employees were locked out of their own offices and emails. These employees had the necessary clearances and tried to protect sensitive data from those who had no clearance, who then plugged in external hard drives and copied all that data to take elsewhere, possibly to an unsecure location. Just a note. Another reason external media is not allowed to be plugged in is IT does not know what could be potentially uploaded. There is the very real concern spyware could make its way through government computers and pull more data or cause untold damage to systems. This is not to say that it's intentionally being uploaded, but a lot of illegal downloads have some sort of spyware attached to them, which could be inadvertently tacked into these government computers. Now, Musk's team, who does not have any security clearances, they're going in and out of government offices with their own hard drives. They are pulling data and doing who knows what. Some initial news articles claim the DOGE team only had read-only access. However, it was discovered one of the team members, the aforementioned Marco Ellis, had edit access for a period. A court order blocked this usage, for now. On Friday, 14 February, U.S. District Judge Jeanette Vargas placed a temporary restraining order on the DOGE team and their access to the systems. Meanwhile, the Treasury Inspector General is launching an audit to look into DOGE's access to the systems to see if there is abuse at work. Some of what the payment systems handle is tax refunds, Social Security benefits, and veterans benefits. This is frightening. I'm sorry, but I do not want an outside agency not under government regulation messing around with my taxes and my refund. What I earn yearly from my current job keeps me well below the poverty line. I pay my taxes in America, and every year I desperately need that refund for my family. The last thing I need is for the world's richest man to decide I do not need that money. Then there are all the people who receive Social Security, be it because they are on disability or simply retired. According to the Social Security Administration, the estimated average monthly Social Security retirement benefit for January of 2025 is $1,976, so about $1,900, just under $2,000. This totals a whopping $23,000 and change per year. If Social Security is still around when I hit retirement age, oh, by the way, I'm scheduled to receive about $600 per month in today's money. As of 2024, the poverty threshold for a two-person household of retirement age with no children was just under $19,000. The average Social Security check places a yearly income over this. Barely. Living just over the poverty threshold does not mean living comfortably, and the poverty threshold is based on a national average, factoring in less expensive locations as well as expensive cities. Not everyone lives in lower-priced locations, thus the amount determined to be over the poverty threshold is really not sustainable for most people. Do we really want the world's richest man complaining that, oh, these retirees or these disabled individuals, they're making too much and he can get rid of all that waste. He can cut that budget. Now, what about veteran benefits? Veteran disability payments range from $1,400 to $48,000 per year. Please note, this is per year. I'm not discussing per month anymore. Yes, those who are on 91 to 100% disability bring home a low-end salary. I repeat, those on 91 to 100% disability. They are written off as being completely disabled. This means they cannot work like most of the general public, and this is after they served their nation. Are these veterans another waste? Do we want Musk deciding they should not receive any compensation for their service which disabled them? Do we really trust the man who is on the warpath to find excess spending by digging through our pensions and veterans' disability and veterans' pensions? As for veterans, there is even more. More than 1,000 employees in the Department of Veterans Affairs were dismissed. These were not just desk jockeys who processed paperwork. These included researchers working on cancer treatment, opioid addiction, prosthetics, and burn pit exposure. These were the people whose job it was to aid U.S. military veterans. One friend of mine is a cancer survivor. They tried to go onto the VA website to get recent test results. The site kept giving errors, and they were unable to check on their important information. This is a veteran who served 20 years and deployed. Why are they pushed aside? So many on the right love to honor America's soldiers. They praise these heroes. Trump talked about veterans and worked hard to gain their votes. Well, until he made fun of them and called them losers.
You know, something very nice just happened to me. A man came up to me and he handed me his Purple Heart. I always wanted to get the Purple Heart. This was much easier.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Now he is showing his true colors even clearer in terms of the military. He loves it, so long as they are fighting for him. Once people are out of the military, they're no longer useful and only a drain on the federal budget and should be left to fend for themselves. Rather than help those who defend the nation, it's far better to save money. Speaking of finances, not just the Treasury, but DOGE now wants to also access the IRS records. This is just after it was announced that thousands of IRS workers will be laid off in the middle of tax season. The IRS is already overworked with not enough employees. Now they are losing vital workers to help with the onslaught of tax season. At the same time, DOGE wants to place a wrench in the works and get access to the IRS and attempt to rework the whole system. This has the potential for major repercussions on individual Americans as they wait for their tax refunds. At the same time, Musk and Trump offered almost all federal workers an 8-month buyout deal. Federal workers who resigned willingly from their positions would be able to receive pay until the end of September, while not actually having to go to work. About 75,000 workers took the deal, depending on which article you read, but many were highly suspicious. It did not help when Musk posted that the workers could go on an extended vacation. There was also a clause that the workers could not sue the government if they were not paid after all. Considering Trump's history of not paying on contracts, there was every reason to be suspicious. The offer was temporarily paused while a judge reviewed the case. The pause was lifted and the offer was allowed to stand. But immediately after the pause was lifted, the offer ended. Convenient. In the education department, almost 24 employees were already fired. These included special education specialists. These are the people who work hard to find the best way to educate those with learning disabilities.
At stake are resources and support for more than 7 million students with disabilities who depend on the agency to ensure access to a free public education. And that's at a time when they're already struggling to receive quality schooling because of a shortage of special education teachers.
In the past, most families took those with disabilities and simply closed them off from the world, ashamed from them. Look at America, look at Europe 150 years ago. We hide the disabled, they're a shame. Is that what we're going back to? Why are we cutting experts who help the learning disabled? There were also almost $900 million in cuts to the department's Institution of Education Services. This institute tracks the progress of America's students. Over 100 contracts in the institute were canceled. It may not seem important to track students' progress, but it is. Think about all the times Trump complained about how far behind America was in test scores. It was this institute which helped make educators aware of this. Is it really better to ignore a problem and let it grow? Musk has also said in interviews there is a low birth rate in America. Educated individuals have less or no children. Christian people, uneducated individuals, they have more children.
the more religious, the less educated, and the poorer, the higher the birth rate.
Yeah.
So like if like there's low religious, low on the religion, high on education, and high on income, that has the lowest birth rate by far.
Yeah.
Do you think there may be a correlation there? It could be that Musk would like to keep Americans uneducated. Why else would he and Trump be so eager to dismantle the department which helps educate the populace? Much of what is being done by Musk and Trump is highly questionable, and people's lives are hanging in the balance. Next on the docket are the Pentagon and the Federal Aviation Administration. Trump expected Musk to find government waste in the Pentagon. This runs a little contradictory. Musk's own company, SpaceX, has billions of dollars in contracts with the Pentagon. However, this has not been addressed as potential excessive spending. This is interesting. Musk is in charge of cutting excessive spending, yet has contracts with the US government, including the agencies he is sweeping through. That is a conflict of interest, especially since Musk's companies were under scrutiny for possible fraudulent activity. US Aid was investigating Starlink's operations in the Ukraine. Now US Aid was hacked and slashed and practically closed down by Musk. That seems rather suspicious. While other agencies have been thinned out, US Aid, which was a potential threat to Musk, was gutted and temporarily shuttered. Then there is Tesla, which is under investigation for possible issues over its autopilot systems by the National Highways Traffic Safety Administration. Senator Adam Schiff of California noted Musk's position may not even be legal. It seems a senior White House official, in consultation with the Office of Government Ethics, would need to provide a written waiver to allow Musk to be appointed as a special government employee. And it looks like this was never done. There was also the question of whether or not Musk completed a financial disclosure report and if he received any waivers for his financial connections. Now we have Musk, placed in a position which did not go through the normal checks and balances of the government, sweeping through the government offices to cut out anything he does not like. The White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, claimed if there was any conflict of interest, then Musk would step away from those investigations.
As you also heard, Elon address this directly yesterday in the alleged conflict of interest. And he said everything he's doing is very public. And if you all perceive a conflict of interest, you're welcome to bring that up. And as the president said, if he feels like Elon is engaging in something that's a conflict of interest, he will tell Elon not to do that. And Elon also said yesterday that before he moves forward with anything, he consults with the president of the United States.
Yet DOGE swept through US Aid without a pause. This is not stepping away. At the same time, contrary to Musk's claims, DOGE is not transparent about what they are doing. When I went on the new DOGE government website, the front page was just a list of Musk's DOGE posts from X. When I clicked on them, they took me to X. So essentially, they were a government sponsorship of X. This is already a clear conflict of interest. People trying to get answers on a US government page are redirected to Musk's personal business, which he makes money off of. The rest of the site is rather limited and definitely not transparent. The page which claims to show savings, it does not go into really good details. It does state $55 billion so far have been saved in government cuts. While that does sound like a large amount of money in the federal budget, this is nothing. I mean, yes, to you and I, $55 billion, we would live like kings. But federal budget, that's pennies. It is also nowhere near the $1 trillion promised that Musk would find to be able to cut out of the budget. As for the transparency, yes, the website lists all the contracts canceled or the departments which had cuts. However, the list of contracts and departments do not state details about what was ended. It's just names and titles, and most of that's not going to make sense to the average person. To the general public, these names mean nothing. Though this is beneficial for Musk and Trump, if the general public does not understand what is cut or canceled, then they cannot complain if it is something useful. Instead, the general public will blindly cheer the cutting of finances, regardless if it hurts them, because they're oblivious. And more on these supposed savings later. The workforce section breaks down how many people work in various offices and the salary ranges of the employees. Musk did not discover anything new to add to this page. It even states at the bottom, all the data came from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, one of the offices that he hijacked. The best section has to be the regulations section. The title Regulations makes it look like people will find all the government regulations there. Nope. What there is are charts of word counts. Seriously. According to one chart, the Code of Federal Regulations has 98.68 million words. Okay, and this ties in with Musk's obsession with paperwork. In a previous video, I discussed his interview with Germany's AfD candidate, Alice Weidel. One point I did not go over from this interview was his complaint over German paperwork and all the documents he had to turn in to open his business in Germany. This section of the DOGE website is more of the same. Seriously, he should not be acting like an undergraduate student who is looking for the minimum word count needed for his end-of-semester essays. This is just ridiculous. Yes, an argument could be made that legislation is wordy, but sorry, it very often needs to be. Even the government cannot work in simply black and white. There are so many nuances which need to be covered in any official documents. So, yes, federal regulations get long. The About section does not explain anything. It only takes people to the executive order which created DOGE. The Join link is a basic form where people can place their basic contact info and upload a resume to try and join the DOGE team. For a government job, this is a pretty casual way to apply. Most positions go through USA Jobs or other government sites with numerous questions. Heck, most jobs at regular companies go through more steps. Basically, the website is rather worthless and is not providing any transparency. The frightening thing is that there seems to be no oversight to Musk and his DOGE team. In addition to creating DOGE in the first place, Trump's response to all the backlash has been to further entrench DOGE in the government. On 11 February, less than a month after the executive order creating DOGE, Trump signed another, creating new positions in the government. One of the restrictions placed on the government is a hiring ratio. The plan shall require that each agency hire no more than one employee for every 4 employees that depart. That sounds lovely on paper, but in practice, that is a mess. Case in point, almost all jobs on military bases are government jobs. The exceptions are a few facilities, such as the PX and commissary, though they are through companies with government contracts. Any services, like the libraries, the childcare facilities, these are government jobs. Even that crafts center that I used to work in, that's a government job. Last time Trump was in office, he placed a hiring freeze on government jobs. This made a huge mess in the childcare facilities. Normally, it can take about 3 to 4 months to hire someone for these positions. I know from personal experience as a facility manager. This is under the best circumstances. I would place a notice for an open position. A store clerk, nice and simple. The notice generally needed to be left up for 2 to 4 weeks. Afterward, the HR department would weed through all the candidates, and I would have access to a list. They would tell me who I was potentially allowed to hire. I would pull people for interviews, talk to them, look over their resumes. Once I selected a candidate, I sent the name back to HR, and they would begin the hiring process. This included background checks, which could take up to 2 months in some cases. Very often in the meantime, the person would have accepted a different job or decided to decline the offer. Instead, they decided to stay home with the family. Okay, cool. Then we begin the process all over again. While this may not seem very important for recreation facilities, okay, it's a store clerk, who cares? This is crucial for the childcare facilities. There, the staff are taking care of children in the military community. There are many single soldiers. Sorry, not all soldiers are married, male or female, and they need to take care of their children while they're at work. There are also dual military or dual working families, which have the same issue. Yeah, soldiers marry soldiers and they make babies. It happens, folks. It doesn't mean that in traditional fashion, the wife suddenly quits her job. Or even if they're not dual military, again, dual working families. These families, the spouse, male or female, needs to work a second job in addition to the soldier because they're not making enough money. Babysitters get very expensive, and childcare centers are not always available, and they are certainly not always affordable. with this new regulation to hire only one person for every 4 who leave. This understaffs a necessary service on the bases, which is already notoriously understaffed. There are constantly waiting lists for the childcare centers, often with people waiting months for a spot to open. This means soldiers cannot focus all their energy on the job, and instead they're placed in a position where they need to scramble for alternative care for their children. The easy answer for married families is to have one parent stay at home. Again, this is not an option for dual military families. A parent can't just say, I'm not going to go to the military job today. They're AWOL. That's a legal issue. And again, when one spouse is a civilian, there's a lot of families where they cannot afford to have one person stay at home. This is only one facility which will be severely impacted by the attempt to curb excessive spending. Yes, the order states this does not pertain to military personnel. That means soldiers, airmen, etc. That does not mean the government employees. Does not mean the large civilian workforce who supports our military. There is a huge infrastructure of support. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services is looking at losing about 5,000 employees. Approximately 1,300 of them will come from the Center for Disease Control alone. Think about this. The CDC deals with keeping diseases under control. Regardless of what some think about vaccines and all the mask mandates during COVID, the CDC did eventually help limit deaths during the pandemic with their measures. Yes, they may not have handled the pandemic initially correctly, but once they got on track, they prevented a lot of deaths. It was the extensive funding thrown at researchers around the country and even the globe, which enabled a quick discovery of a vaccine. Researchers who fought for years to get any kind of funding suddenly had an abundance of money. One woman pointed out that she had so many resources suddenly that she was able to do essentially 10 years of research by her old standards of funding. Stuff that would take her 10 years, she was able to knock out in such a short amount of time because she wasn't scrambling for funds or trying to do other projects for those funds. She was able to focus on what needed to be done. It was amazing for researchers. This does not normally happen. Look back in history at Great Plagues. The Black Death in Europe in the 14th century decimated nearly half the population. In the 19th century in America, outbreaks of typhoid, cholera, malaria, etc. killed millions and millions of people, our ancestors. We need researchers to be funded so they can keep on top of new diseases as they appear. Folks, COVID hit the world just over 5 years ago. That means that everyone who voted for Trump was easily old enough to remember just how damaging COVID was. The youngest voters were 13 when COVID struck. This is not only in living memory, but very recent memory. Many of us knew people who died from it. I lost some family to it as well. My husband lost friends. Just imagine how much worse it could have been if there was no funding for a vaccine or research was not done to see how best to limit exposure. This is what is so important about all the funding being cut by DOGE. Most of the jobs and departments being cut, they do vital work for the nation. This executive order also places a DOGE team lead in each government agency. Now there is a member of Musk's personally picked team to oversee every government agency, a team which is not subject to any oversight and has major conflicts of interest. Instead, they will get to decide what goes on in each government agency. While this may sound like a good idea, these are outsiders who do not know how to efficiently run government agencies. This has already been seen with the damage DOGE has already inflicted. After DOGE decimated U.S. aid, Secretary of State Marco Rubio ran in to do some damage control. He created a waiver for any programs which were delivering humanitarian aid. Anything that was potentially life-threatening, he tried to save. Though even with his waiver, the programs are still not getting funding. The damage has been done, and it's a big mess. Another wonderful cut of government waste was the hundreds of workers in charge of nuclear weapons programs who were fired. Only the government took that back almost immediately. About 350 people were fired at the National Nuclear Security Administration. Some even lost access to their emails before they found out they were fired. So when they tried to report to work as usual, they were suddenly locked out. Some of these employees work on reassembling warheads. This is a highly sensitive job, and the government cannot afford to lose these experts. Most of the employees have since been hired back, again, almost immediately. This is a clear case of DOGE not knowing what's going on. They swept through and cut a percentage of jobs like they promised. Only those jobs were vital and could not be cut. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand Trump and Musk when they say the government is bloated. Yes, I saw this even in our little recreation facilities. There were times I wanted to cut back hours or cut out a position entirely, but was not allowed to do so. Sorry, but when business is slow in the evening, we do not need 2 employees at the front counter, 2 employees in a back room, and 3 office workers. Heck, one of the office positions was already too much for that facility. Yes, there should be government trimming. Most of the nation agrees on this. However, there are processes which must be followed. It is not a good idea to simply go through and randomly cut jobs based on people still being in the probationary period or just setting a percentage to cut and doing so willy-nilly.
Bill Clinton did things to shrink the size of government, and he did it with Congress. There's a difference between that and ignoring Congress and violating the law.
Heck, many of those people still in the probationary period are filling crucial jobs which had been vacant due to maybe somebody retiring or moving on to a different job. Just because they're in a probationary period doesn't mean the job was newly created. Some new jobs were created due to serious understaffing, like the IRS positions. There needs to be a clear review of all the positions in each department and a determination of which ones are not necessary and can be cut without causing harm to the agency and without causing undue increase in workload for those remaining. As Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia pointed out, Congress appointed funding for various departments and the money needs to be spent there, or it needs to be moved to another department by approval. Funding cannot simply be left unused or moved around without Congress's vote.
The Impoundment Act that says once Congress has appropriated dollars for a particular purpose, the president is not allowed to say, yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to spend this money, but not that money.
Also, many government jobs, by the way, they're filled by veterans. They get priority points when applying to government jobs over other civilians. No joke. Veterans who have served their country, they're now being pushed aside in these massive cuts. For a nation that loves to praise their military and veterans, is this really how we want to treat them? Remember how Vietnam veterans were treated in the backlash? We look down on that period of history. Do we really want to do this again? Another worrying aspect is how, up until recently, Trump and his staff have said again and again, Musk is a special government official. Yet, now there are lawsuits against DOGE as being illegal. Now the tune has changed. In order to sidestep the rule that government agencies and head officials need to be approved by Congress, the White House is suddenly saying Musk is only an advisor to Trump and not really in an official job. This is not addressing the problem. This is working around it while continuing to let Musk run wild through the government. Another tactic Trump is using is he claims he will put up to 20% of the money saved back in the pockets of the populace. Talking about those supposed savings again. Let's just say DOGE manages to cut $1 trillion like they claim they will. 20% of that has the potential to put approximately $600 in the pockets of every American based on the current population census of a little over 330 million citizens. Awesome! That may seem like a nice chunk of change for poorer individuals, yet it is only a small boost in the short term. If that money stayed in the government, it could continue to be used for medical aid for veterans, the poor, the elderly, for school grants for higher education. In a nation where medical bills, even with insurance, go well into the $100,000s for serious issues, and a college degree currently costs about $150,000, is $600 really such a great savings? That money could save a poor person's life while giving them a chance to get a higher education or learn a trade so they can live longer and make more money if it stays in the government. By the way, at the moment, as noted earlier, the savings are only $55 billion. If the government gives 20% of this back to the people, then the public only pockets about $32 per person. The poorest Americans will not even be helped by this in the short term. This is nothing. That won't even pay for groceries. It is pennies. But pennies that in the right place can help save millions. The latest news as of recording this video, Musk has sent a mass email to all federal workers, giving them 48 hours, 2 days, to state what they had done in the last week to justify keeping their job. I don't know about you, but it was not uncommon in the jobs I held for there to be no amazing events during the course of a week. My current job as an adjunct professor is not exactly earth-shattering. If I had to say what I did in the last week, it would not be particularly interesting, especially to people who do not know my line of academia. That said, I still play a vital role in the academic careers of my students. I have had students thank me for helping them with their studies and helping them become better students due to my teaching. I was recently nominated by my students for a teaching award, though that was more than a week ago, so I guess it doesn't really matter. I still make a notable difference. However, I'm pretty certain if I had to write out my last week for Musk or even my entire job, he would see it as worthless and be very quick to cut it. Holding jobs hostage for people to wow him is not the way to clean out government bloat. Again, the appropriate method is to actually examine the jobs with people who know these departments, then determine if there could be some cuts that will not unnecessarily increase the workload of those who remain, and thus decrease efficiency in the long run. In only 2 years, just 2 little years, there are midterm elections due. That is when the public has a chance to push for major changes in the government. Your votes matter. All of our votes matter. Your voice, all of our voices matter. Until then, use your voice. Step up, write your representative, write your senator, make your voice heard. Let them know this is not what you want for your nation. Now, it was pointed out to me, I made this call to action in the past, cool, but I have not made it clear how to do this. That's an error on my part, sorry. So, I am putting a link in the description below. It helps you find your congressman, so not your senator, but your congressman, so you can contact them. It is a link on the U.S. House of Representatives site. All you have to do is enter your address and it will list your representative. I put in my postal code in the U.S. where I am registered to vote, and that it actually fell between 2 districts, and so it could be either this representative or that representative, so it said, hey, we also need your street address. And then it narrowed down which one was my representative. Nice and easy. Takes 2 pieces of information from you and then gives you contact information. Now, as various government websites are getting cleaned out, I am working on trying to find a better site that is not touched by the government. It's free of it. And I'm also trying to work on a Google Doc that I can link to all the videos, and I will keep it updated with the current contact information in case, heaven forbid, this information disappears, and that will be for representatives and senators. In the meantime, you have the opportunity to shape your future.